Welcome to another edition of Eye on Education, special summer edition as we get set to go back to school here in Nashua. I'm Ed Leash, your host, and today we'll be meeting and talking with Nashua's new Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Mario Andrade. After several years of confusion, uncertainty, dealing with COVID, and anything else that might have arisen, it seems that tranquility has returned to the Nashua School Department, the National Board of Education, and things are moving forward. Not to say that there aren't some issues still out there in terms of staffing and other things, but things are moving forward as we get set to welcome students back to the classrooms in just a few short days. Welcome, Dr. Andrade. Welcome back to Nashua, and welcome to Eye on Education.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ed. Thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to having this community conversation.
Well, you're about a month, well, before we get into that, for those who may have not have gone to the website or followed the whole process that led to your hiring, who is Mario Andrade?
Well, great question. I think I'm still evolving. So my previous experience in Nashua, about 2 years ago, I was introduced in Nashua as an assistant principal, actually at South, and that didn't last too long. I ended up transitioning to being the interim assistant, the interim Elm Street principal during COVID. And a couple months later, I was the interim assistant superintendent for about 6 months. Prior to that, I was a superintendent in Rhode Island for 5 years, and an assistant superintendent before that for an additional 5 years. But what really drew me back into the superintendency was my experience in Nashua. So it was really nice to be a superintendent in Rhode Island, and I think we had a lot of successes, and I transitioned out for a little bit. But going back at the building level as a building principal, as the assistant superintendent, and then this last year I was a consultant across the country working with many school districts, actually prepared me to be a better superintendent. And so even though I was a finalist about a year and a half ago and I withdrew, and then being a consultant, I was a service provider at that time. So it really prepared me to come back to Nashua to be a better leader. Sometimes I think we get complacent in roles and we forget how it is to be at the teacher level or the building principal level or an assistant superintendent on the importance of communication and knowing your audience. So I think really coming back to Nashua at this time, having the experiences a year ago has really made me a better leader, because I've seen what the importance of the superintendent's office is to be really that support service to students, to our educators, to our paraprofessionals, to our adults, to our building administrators, and the importance of having a clear communication plan.
What drew you to the education field in the first place?
That's a wonderful question. So my first job, actually, I went to the University of Connecticut, and I was a sociology major. And my first job was actually working for a radio station, and I wrote commercials. So writing jingles, but I always played sports. And so I knew, I started coaching, and then I was like, am I really gonna be writing radio commercials for my entire career? I was a horrible salesperson, because I would tell people like this isn't a good fit, like you should be advertising somewhere else. I really wasn't making a lot of money for the radio station, and I started looking at what are my next moves. So I started pursuing a master's degree in special education. So that's really, I was kind of doing a transition, and coaching led me to kind of believe I really enjoyed working with kids. And I was able to get a master's in special education, worked in a residential school for a number of years. And then from there, I elevated to a coordinator kind of pretty quickly. My first teaching job in public schools was really working on professional development programs. So even though I was 24 years old, I was actually working with Brown University, AFT, the University of Rhode Island, a lot of think tanks on how do we provide better professional development for our teachers, and how does that translate to the students. So that was my foray, like even at the beginning, that I knew like I want to support teachers. And as I kind of grew as a classroom teacher, an assistant principal, assistant superintendent, I always had a keen eye on how do we provide the best professional development for our teachers and our support staff, because they're on the front line. So that's really how I got into education. But early on, I was always aware that I wanted to do professional development and build school cultures so that our educators are top notch, because they are the service providers for our students.
So you, like me, have proven that there is life after radio.
There is life after radio, absolutely.
All right, July 1, you came in, fairly smooth transition from the previous Dr. McKinney. What was the first crisis you've had to deal with in the first month and a half?
I wouldn't say we haven't had any crises.
Well, I hope I haven't jinxed you.
No. So, and I have to thank Dr. McKinney, the Board of Education. I walked into a solid foundation. Nashua, again, being in consulting and coming back, I knew there was strong bones in Nashua. There's a solid foundation, visiting classrooms, seeing the quality of our educators, support staff. I knew we were going to be successful, and Dr. McKinney and the other administrators have built that up over years. So I'm walking into a really good conversation where we're starting to talk about what should school look like post-COVID. And that's really been not a crisis, but a really engaging conversation. So our biggest crisis right now is obviously hiring and making sure we have enough adults in front of students at the beginning. Other than that, like I said, Dr. McKinney and the Board of Education, our administrators, have really laid a solid foundation on what's our next conversation, how do we move forward.
And I think most of your labor contracts are pretty much settled, so.
Yeah, we have 2 outstanding, but they're in pretty good shape right now, so that's not too bad.
So going forward, what is your vision once you get schools open and you address the hirings in the para and teacher area? What's your vision, say, for your first year here in Nashua going forward?
Loaded question. That's fantastic. So I'm having a lot of community conversations right now and really talking about how do we become one Nashua? What's unifying us? So for the last couple of years, we've been talking about what divides us. So when I can put the question back on you, what are our shared beliefs and traditions in Nashua? Right? What are the strengths of our community? What are untapped resources that we can start having conversations? And then what's going to be unifying us? That's the conversations I'm having right now. And I think we need to talk about all the positive aspects and support systems that we have in place. Further along in those lines is that actually we'll have our admin retreat, and we'll roll this out to all our educators and support staff, that's the exact question that we're having. What is our vision of equitable instruction in Nashua? And I don't think right now we can answer the question. If you asked 500 teachers in the district of what does good instruction look like, we might have different answers. So we want to have a unified voice of what does good instruction look like in every classroom pre-K through 12, and we'll develop that vision together over the course of the year. So where do we need to be in May? And from there, if we know what good instruction looks like, we can plan backwards to say, all right, so what does professional development look like? What does our budget look like? What kind of consultants do we need to bring in? Professional development for our teachers? And again, how does that translate into student achievement for our students? So that's the conversation of if we can talk about what unifies us around instruction, I think that's going to be a strength. So that's going to be a lot of the work that we do over the course of the next year, is really what does good instruction look like in Nashua? And I think that's through a collective process, working with our administrators, with our teachers, with our community, and talking about what should they expect in any classroom or in any school in the Nashua School District.
One of the comments last several years, transparency, better communication.
Yep.
I've talked to several people knowing you and I were going to be sitting down, and they've said since day one, the communication has been there. You love to engage people and talk to them and ask them, as you just said,
right.
what's on your mind? What are you thinking? And so that is a step in the right direction. And obviously, you're going to take that beyond just the walls. You're out in the community talking to folks, and that to me is a critical piece.
Yeah. No,
Given everything we've been through from the pandemic right on down, to restore some faith, if you will, in the whole process.
Yep.
But the instruction piece obviously is the big piece, and I ask if you've had conversations with the union president, Adam Marcoux, yet, and how do you see your relationship going forward with him?
Yeah, had a great conversation with Adam, and again, we had experience, history over the last year. So it's a partnership, right? It's not adversarial. Adam and I talked about what are we doing? What are 3 or 4 things that we possibly can be doing this year in collaboration moving forward? And how do we plan for that? So, we'll have our conversations on, I think right now we're scheduled for weekly meetings. So we'll have our ongoing schedule, but it is about what are we doing collaboratively? And that's really important. I think it's a strong partnership. Adam is a great resource. Again, I talked about what are our untapped resources. Adam's a great communicator. He does a great job working with our teachers and our support staff on what is that message. So again, I think he's a positive aspect, and as long as we're having open communication on where we're going, what's the why behind it, he's an effective communicator. So I only see really a positive relationship stemming from our conversations. But again, it's like, what are we being proactive about? So if we're always working in the past, then we're too reactionary. So I think really working with Adam is, what are we anticipating coming up at the next month? How do we plan that together? What are potential obstacles? What are potential solutions? So that's the way I see working with Adam. It's really like a solution-seeking kind of partnership.
Normally, the enrollment number is after the first couple of days of school put out. Ballpark as to what you're anticipating for the number of students returning to National Public Schools?
Yeah, we haven't seen a major loss since our enrollment from last year. So I think COVID definitely had a play where we lost some families, but our enrollment number looks hovering around the same, between 10,500 and slightly under 11,000. So the numbers have been pretty steady. We've been working on looking at class sizes. I think our community would be really happy that the average class size is around 20 or under at that point. So we have small class sizes at this point.
A lot of construction going on at the current 2 middle schools, and it's finally started at the Brian McCarthy Memorial Middle School after some delay in just getting what you needed to build it, materials. Do you anticipate any problem, delay at either Pennachuck or Fairgrounds with the work that's going on there?
No, we've been in a lot of conversations with Javi, who's our key architect and construction company, ongoing meetings. So we're looking in really good shape of opening schools. Pennachuck, there might be a couple workarounds where not all the classrooms are going to be ready for the opening. The gymnasium's not going to be ready for the opening, but again, we're prepared for that, so we have alternate spaces. But Fairgrounds is in great shape to open. Pennachuck, again, we'll be working in a construction zone, but the school's being built for 800 students, and it's currently under 600. So there's available spaces, but just a little kind of alterations of our traffic patterns and for our students in around the school. But other than that, both schools will be ready for opening. McCarthy looks great. I was actually by there recently. And it's really, when we're talking about, what's our eye on education, we are building schools for the future. And it's really exciting. It's more than just the steel and the construction aspect of it. But when we start talking about what does the Nashua schools look like from now into future generations, we're building those schools, but more importantly, we're all architects in that conversation. How is a classroom teacher, the superintendent, a parent talking about what is that quality of instruction that we want to see in those buildings? So this is really exciting times for Nashua, and I really want to thank the community, the JSSBC, and their forward thinking on really renovating all the schools to be meeting the demands of the 21st century.
Anyone going by Pennachuck are going to wonder the number of traffic lights.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the new traffic pattern and for safety reasons, obviously, and to help expedite the buses getting out.
Absolutely.
Which is the biggest thing at any school of that size. Get the buses out, get the kids home, and but it's really come a long way from its initial, and then after the roof collapse there, they did some rehab and fix it up. But it's going to impress people when they see it if they haven't been by there lately.
Yeah, and if, again, I think we have to kind of open our doors, and I would love to do some community tours at some point and have the community see the quality of work that's happening in those schools. One thing, just I think for the community, again, we talked about the new middle school. So we are having a redistricting conversation. So it's bigger than the middle schools. So we're hiring a consultant. We're looking for a lot of community input. It might turn into a K-12 conversation. So again, I think it's more than one committee making decisions on how do we redistrict. So we will be having a consultant come in to help us facilitate conversations. Again, what does middle school instruction look like? What does redistricting look like? What does that mean to the community? Again, this is something that we need to get right. It's just not about drawing lines on a map and saying this school is going to that school. Kind of going back again, like we're talking about a lot of traditions in Nashua.
Yes.
Right, and so that gets really personal. So it's more than, again, it's a larger community conversation. And it might be something that even though it could possibly divide some people, it also can unify. So again, what does the conversation be, and what does the future of Nashua schools look like? Could be through this redistricting conversation, through community forums. So we're looking for someone to come in and help us facilitate those conversations. Because if we can guarantee high quality education in every classroom from pre-K through 12, then where you're going to school might be a little easier to kind of swallow.
And it's never easy.
No, it's never easy.
You're never going to please everybody. And having been the parent of students redistricted any elementary school, I know one of our concerns was not so much for our third grader that was moving, but her sister was going to the first grade, and could they guarantee that she would go from first through sixth at the new school?
Right.
And there was no guarantee, and it's sensitive, but I think if people keep an open mind and you open it up the way you're talking about doing, and you've got a lot of input, that you'll hopefully get a good opinion of folks, and the majority will be felt that they've been well served.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, this time where, again, everybody's across, it's not just Nashua, across any kind of conversation, it's been so divisive. But I think it's a good time to reflect on what are our shared beliefs and traditions in Nashua, right? As a business owner, what is our vision of a portrait of a graduate? So when someone goes 13 years through our system, what does it mean to be career ready? What are our business partners looking for? How are they part of the kind of conversation? So I think that's important as well. So I think this redistricting conversation could unify us a lot more. Again, what are those expectations? And so even though I'm talking about what unifies us, I also know each school has their own personality and culture.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to take that away.
No.
But we want to guarantee high quality instruction, curriculum and assessments in every single classroom, so that a third grader at Bicentennial has the same expectations as a third grader at Ledge Street. And so again, but each school will have their own personalities, but we expect greatness in every classroom.
Now, given the delay with the construction at McCarthy, that's extending Elm Street's life a little longer, are there any temporary fixes, repairs that need to be done to Elm Street to keep it chugging along for that extra period of time, or are they pretty well set, the physical plan?
Yeah, the physical plan is pretty well set. I mean, unfortunately it's an old building, so heating issues that we had 10 years ago are still heating issues that we have, right? But again, a shout out to our director of plant ops, like Sean Smith, has been really on top of all the construction or renovations at Elm Street to make sure that it is, when it is open, that our health and safety and cleanliness in that building is the utmost importance. So no major issues at that building for the next 2 years.
Looking ahead, do you have any long-term goals that once the dust settles and McCarthy's open and everything's moving on all cylinders, do you have any long-term goals or visions that you would like to see started and implemented here?
So it's always about continuous improvement. One of the things when I first came to Nashua, and I saw it on the office wall, was gateway to opportunity. And I think we have to live that. So how do we create a personalized gateway to opportunity for not only our students, but every adult in the community? And I think that's the vision of the school. So how are we nimble enough, adaptable enough, that we create these gateways for everybody who has contact with our school system, right? And so that could be a gateway that's through AP courses. It could be gateways through personalized learning, internships. So that's the big vision, is really how do we personalize and make these gateways for opportunities no matter what a student wants to pursue. So, that's my long-term vision, is really that personalization and creating gateways and opportunities for every single adult. So even if you're a third grade teacher, what does your personalized professional development mean? How do I help create a culture and foster an environment where our teachers are growing, right? They have that professional curiosity. So the same thing for our students, that we have incredible amount of resources in this community, that they have the resources and supports to do whatever they want. And so in ensuring that, again, there's high quality instruction in every single classroom. Our teachers are teaching to the rigor of the standards, but again, it's still personalized so that you feel like there's no obstacles in meeting your career, academic, or social goals.
Your children are out of school, so unlike previous superintendents, you won't have a tough time being Switzerland between the two high schools. Whereas Dr. Mosley had to walk that very fine line because he had a kid going to one of the high schools, and he had to be fair to both. So Switzerland shouldn't be a problem for you.
No. But I think it's one of those, again, where my goal is to be visible in every single school. So as much as I love the Let Street office, I shouldn't be in there a lot between 8 and 2. I should be in the classrooms, rolling up my sleeves with the teachers, with our building principals, and getting to know our students and seeing whatever our initiatives and our goals are in action. So I want to be a really visible superintendent, both within our school walls, but also in the community. So how do we foster some of those relationships as well?
So what does Mario Andrade do to relax when he's not thinking school, thinking what needs to be done? What do you do to relax and unwind?
Yeah, so a lot of family time. So with my wife, I have two children in college now that are both active in the volleyball scene. So any time that I can support my students, my kids. Right? Like that's. Yeah. But really, that's what I do to relax, and then reading, exercising. But really, anytime I can get to be with my family, that's my relaxation.
Well, you're a month and a half in, and all seems well. And just from our conversation today and prior to coming on the air, I think Nashua made a good choice. Yeah. And I think that you will deliver, and things will go smoothly for the next few years, unless anything unforeseen comes up. But that you can't plan for. You just need to be ready to move forward, and taking your approach to improving across the board from the bottom up and the top down, I think will send the right message, not only to your staff, but to the parents of children here in Nashua. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Again, thank you for the opportunity. But the only way that I'm successful is through the collaboration, right? Collaboration and communication. So only together will we be successful.
Dr. Mario Andrade, National new Superintendent of Schools, thanks for being with us here on Eye on Education.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
You've been watching a special back-to-school edition of Eye on Education. I'm Ed Leishis, your host. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.